My name is Michael Summers. I'm president of the Ireland-US chapter here in Ireland. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening. First of all, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas. Delighted to see so many council members here and also their guests. And at this stage, I suppose we all know a lot of each other. We couldn't continue what we're doing without the help of some great sponsors. And one of the consistently loyal council supporters has been our friend Yvonne Muldoon, who's Sales Director of Aer Lingus. So at this stage, I hand over to Yvonne. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. It's a great pleasure for me to be here back on the Ireland-US Council podium representing Aer Lingus. Aer Lingus was my first job 20 years ago, and I've just rejoined the company 9 months ago. So delighted to be here with all my colleagues. Got Alan Malloy, Head of Corporate Sales, Andrea Hunter and Dermot Lee as well. So great to be here representing Aer Lingus. We are delighted to sponsor the Christmas reception, and our relationship with Michael and Roddy and David and all the council members have really grown from strength to strength over the years. So it's our pleasure to be here tonight with you all. This has been such an exciting time for Aer Lingus and for me to rejoin the company as we embarked on I suppose, the largest transatlantic expansion since 1958. The transatlantic growth has taken us up to 13 routes between Ireland and North America, which will offer about 2.5 million seats in 2017, which is a 21% increase on capacity, which is amazing. So no pressure whatsoever. In May, we launched Los Angeles. In September, we had a double route launch with Newark, New Jersey, and then followed very shortly by Hartford, Connecticut, which is really the gateway to New England. And earlier this month, we launched Miami, Florida. So that just gives you an indication of the amount of extra capacity that we have on board, but also we announced some additional rotations for summer 17. So if you want to go to Los Angeles next summer, the schedule will go to daily. Orlando will increase to 4 times weekly. Chicago will go to double daily. So this is really a testament of our continued commitment to providing that essential gateway between Ireland and North America for our business partners. So it is a great honour. I've been asked to introduce the US Ambassador, which is a great privilege. We are delighted that he's agreed to come and join us this evening. So it is a distinct honour, a high privilege for me to ask you to all welcome Ambassador Malley to the stage. Thank you.
Good evening. 2 items of business. First, I wanted to recognize my colleague, Archbishop Charles Brown, the Papal Nuncio, who's here tonight. He is a real treasure for Ireland, a great representative of his church, my church. He is and a very great representative of his native country, the United States. Graduate of Notre Dame, and so it's always great to be in his presence. Great to have you here, Your Grace. The second part of business is this is the closest I've been to this trophy, and I'm making a trip to Mayo next month. And I'm thinking that maybe if you don't, like everybody to just turn their backs for a second, I might borrow that for just a second. I've been to 4 All-Ireland football matches in my time here. 2 ended up in ties, and 2 ended up the other way. So I'll be back next year, and and maybe I'll get a little closer to the trophy. So I arrived here in Ireland as the U.S. Ambassador 26 months ago. I flew on an Aer Lingus flight in early October. My wife and I came here and began a journey of 26 months that I shall never forget as long as I live. I have been treated, we have been treated, my wife and I have been treated so well at every stop along our way. I have conducted either business meetings or town halls in every county in Ireland in my 26 months here. I have met, I think, more people since I've been in Ireland these 26 months than I met in my entire life before coming to Ireland. I have enjoyed every last moment of it, and it has been a treasure to be President Obama's representative here, to be the representative of my country, and a day does not pass that I don't think, literally, a day does not pass that I don't think about what my grandparents would say. My grandparents being nothing more than economic refugees who were taken in by the United States, both of them and their 7 children, and that in 2 generations I get to come back as the ambassador, as the personal representative of the president of the country that gave them refuge. That to me says a great deal about Irish DNA, and it says a great deal about the opportunities that existed, exist, and will always exist in the United States. But I really, really, really recommend doing Ireland as the U.S. ambassador. That is absolutely the best way. That is absolutely the best way to do Ireland. So I'll have been here for about 27 months. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you very much for making this such a wonderful experience for me. When I go back to the U.S. next year, I do not intend to be a stranger, sorry. I intend to do whatever I can to continue to promote the great relationship between Ireland and the United States at all levels, at the personal level, at the cultural level, at the educational level, at the business level. That will be my life's work for as long as I have life, to try to continue what you people have started when you formed so many years ago, and that will be a happy task that I am delighted to undertake. Thank you very much. A happy Christmas to all of you.
Thank you, Ambassador O'Malley. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David O'Sullivan. I know nearly everybody in the room. I think I know nearly everybody in the room. At the very outset, I want to say how grateful we are to Ambassador O'Malley and to his wife, Dina, for the great courtesy and hospitality they've shown council members over many years since he became an ambassador. He has been an energetic and vigorous advocate for ever closer bonds between Ireland and the United States, and I can tell you for sure he will be missed. As his term of office comes to a close, I'd like to wish Kevin and Dina O'Malley Godspeed, great success for the future, and we hope they'll come back and see us often. Thank you very much, Ambassador. My job here this evening is a very simple one. I feel a little bit like John the Baptist. My job is to introduce somebody much more important than me. Danny McCoy, the real McCoy, is the head of the most prestigious business organisation in Ireland. He's an economist by training, and we in the Ireland-US Council are delighted that we'll be partnering this coming March in New York with IBEC on our first ever joint venture partnership for a business summit. As the ambassador so explained so well, these are interesting and challenging and difficult times to know what's going to go on in the future with Brexit and elections in Ireland, with the change of government, and elections in the United States with a big change of government. So we thought it'd be a very important time to have an important conference. We've got some great speakers lined up. It's going to be in New York in March, and Danny's going to give you some more detail about it, and we'll be sending you more detail in the coming month. But we've got some wonderful speakers lined up, and my job is a simple one, to ask Danny McCoy, the Chief Executive of IBEC, to come and talk to us. Danny.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And just as Ambassador O'Malley is leaving, I'd like to just express my own personal warmth towards Ambassador O'Malley. I met him on his first week here, and we actually haven't really spoken. We've seen each other lots of times, but I think that my immediate reaction on meeting him was of the great warmth that he had and the great dignity he had. And he's not just an ambassador for America, he's an ambassador for Ireland, and I really genuinely believe that. So I wish you and your family well. And in fact, I know you need to get away. I'm supposed to be in a tux as well, but I'm skipping out. I would like just to say something as you go. And it is from that great lineage of both ambassadors to Ireland, but also that great democratic tradition here in Ireland. It's actually on a day that wasn't a great day for one of those great people, Ted Kennedy. And I think this actually sums up a lot we like to say about that relationship that may be said of us both in dark passages and in bright days, in the words of Tennyson's that my brother has quoted and loved and have special meaning for me now. I am a part of all that I have met, though much is taken, much abides. That which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And I think, Kevin, for my relationship with you, that captures that great sense of coming at a time when we're in crisis and leaving us in a much better position, which I'm about to talk about. So thank you. The ambassador inspired me on two fronts. One about grandparents, which I've never mentioned my grandparents previously, and I'd like to do so tonight given the company we're in. They met each other in New York City in 1929 and returned to the town of my birth, which is Tuam in County Galway, which is, to anyone who knows their football, it's just Mayo out for a good time, North Galway. And here's a more bizarre one. This tells you more about my friends than anything else. I was referring to the Sam Maguire today with another friend of mine about an acquaintance of ours, in fact a schoolmate, who actually has a criminal offence for having kicked this cup up and down the streets of Tuam in 1998 and is now done for criminal offence. So it's actually looking quite well. So with that inauspicious beginning to where I come from, I suppose, what I'd like to say is that I have been an economist, professional economist, for the best part of 25 years at this stage. I have never in my time been more confident about the Irish economy. In fact, I cannot believe the narrative that exists about the Irish economy domestically. It is not just a marginal misread of what's going on in the economy, it is a gulf. By far the most significant thing to have happened Ireland in my generation has just occurred with the work of the OECD on corporate taxation. Consequence of that is to say that substance is the most crucial determinant of corporate taxation. And corporate taxation will be paid where substance exists. And in a world in which Ireland has taken lots of brickbats for many decades, having both the substance and the tax strategy, truly our time has come. We have seen in the last couple of years substance come into Ireland in a way that I can only describe it as an oil find. And oil is very tangible, and people think about oil in a way that they can visually see it. We're now experiencing intangible corporate migration into Ireland, which is potentially changing the dynamic in our economy. And when it manifests itself, we get the denial oh no, this couldn't possibly be happening. Nothing else to do with us. We're embarrassed by it. Our economy grew by 26% in volume terms in 2015. It actually grew by 33% in value terms. So in a single year, Irish GDP went from 200 billion to 260 billion. To those outside, they said something must be going on in Ireland. We had our suspicions, but this now confirms that this is some kind of tax haven. There's something wrong. It couldn't possibly, but these people at the edge of Europe could have substance, could have their place in globalization, which makes them now in the top 10 countries in the world in terms of income per capita. I'm going to repeat that. In the top 10 countries in the world, income per capita, with countries like Qatar, people who actually did find oil. And so why is my confidence narrative so askew to what you kind of feel or think that might be going on? Why is this such a mismatch, and why are we going to New York, as David said in March, to talk about the substance and why Ireland's day has come? Well, first of all, you get the denial. This couldn't possibly. This is an artificial construct of something going on. So what happened in 2015? Well, what happened in 2015, you could have read it in the Irish Times, because they told us what was happening. We had companies becoming based here in Ireland, Medtronic Covidian deal. Companies like Pfizer attempted to become Irish companies in 2016, but were blocked in that special relationship we have. Aircraft companies moved balance sheets into Ireland. Apple fessed up and said, yes, we moved lots of substance to Ireland in 2015 as well. In fact, 400 billion, near on 400 billion of balance sheets were moved into Ireland in 2015. In any other country, this would be an oil find beyond extreme. 40% of the corporate balance sheet that Ireland had in 2014 was added to in 2015. But of course, the narrative is easier for those who are blind to this to say it's a mirage. Couldn't possibly give rise to anything. Well, where would be the first place you would look for if corporations came to visit? Corporate tax revenue might be actually one place to take a look at what happened. So at the end of 2015, our exchequer was expecting to get 4.3 billion euros from corporate tax revenue. It ended up with 6.8 billion, a full 2.5 billion more than was anticipated. And I know we were getting our kids to do project maths, and I know that we're sophisticated business people and leaders in society. But with a 12.5% corporation tax rate, which is a factor of 1/8, that means that profits had to rise by 20 billion euros in that year, and to be a surprise to us. Not just the ongoing profitability of Irish business, this was a surprise profitability. And for good or ill, this was declaring that his home was Ireland. Now, you can talk about whether this will happen year on year. Is it sustainable? But it's currently happened. And yet the Irish citizens are being confronted with a scenario where, well, we're broke. We can only spend 1 billion euros, maybe 1.3. We found 300 million behind the couch for budget time. And yet on a single tax item, we got 2.5 billion off a surprise in a single year. And just to bring you up to date, the Irish government is predicting over 7 billion euros of corporate tax revenue for 2017. So the dream goes on. So how come we've got this mismatch between what's going on in the narrative in the economy of austerity and keeping down with the Joneses, with a scenario where the CSO have told us in a single year, Irish households have experienced a 6.5% disposable income increase. 6.5%. And I know you're there doing the calculation. You're living in the wrong household if you didn't get a 6.5% disposable income increase, because that's what the stats say. So how could this be true? Well, a household tends to have 2 adults, 2 children. It has a lot of range of different combinations, but 2 adults, 2 children tends to be your stereotypical kind of view. In that household, there's more people at work. And those who are at work the year before are actually working more hours. And yes, there has been wage increases in the Irish economy. In fact, the wage increase in the Irish economy have been ongoing right through the downturn. I met AJ Chopra in December 2010 in IBEC. asked me what was going to happen in 2011 with Irish businesses. I told him 25% of companies will be paying pay increases next year, and we'll be 2%. He said, well, you're bust. How could this be? Because there's a complete mismatch is that what actually happens in the Irish economy is completely connected to this US-Ireland story. By 2010, when the Troika arrived, Ireland was experiencing its record year for export performance. Our balance of payments had gone into surplus, indicative of a business model that was cash generative, that was already beginning to pay its way. What Ireland was experiencing in 2010 was a triangular problem of property, banking, and public finances. And I would challenge anybody today to say those three parts are now fixed. Troika are gone, long gone. But actually the thing that we're here to fix is not currently functioning in a way that a modern society would wish. But despite that, Ireland continues to thrive. It's a brave man, braver than I, but I'm foolish as well. It's clear the Irish economy is still growing very quickly. We see that every day. Those of us who lived through the noughties, as they're now called, would have had a pain in our proverbial, or I'd like to say, given we're EU members, derriere, from listening to moving up the value chain. Well, I'd like to tell you, we have moved up the value chain. We're there. Right around this country, we've experienced the Industrial Revolution that we missed the first time round. And as I said at the start, I'm from Tuam, a small town, 6,000 people. It's not much bigger today than when I left it 30 years ago. And thankfully, my mother continues to send me the Tuam Herald every week in the hope that I might come back. I get mentioned every now and then. It's not favourably, I must admit, with my IBEC hat on. But still, the talk in Tuam is about the sugar factory. This socio-economic plantation by De Valera in the 1930s, which was very welcome. Made the town cosmopolitan, if you can believe that, in the west of Ireland, but it felt like that. I suffered urban angst as a teenager in Tuam. And so every week I look at the photographs. And there are 3 pages, generally, of photographs of people out having a good time in Tuam. And they're often from the same company. There are a number of companies, there's one in particular. So I decided to find out how many people worked at the sugar factory on a full-time basis. And the answer was 200 people. And it closed down in 1996, but they still talk about it. Today, there's a company in Tuam called Valeo, which used to be called Connacht Electronics, which is a French company now. There are 1,200 people working in that factory in Tuam, and they go out a lot because I watch their photographs every week. The editorial never mentions them. As the leader of IBEC, I go to towns all the time. There's always a factory, a modernity, and you get inside that factory, you see the capital that's inside there, you see the capital-labour ratio. The country has never had the platform for the success. The world has now changed post-OECD. It's been the greatest game changer in my lifetime. And we're seeing substance cascade into this country. But Ireland is not an arrivist in this world. We've been 60 years in the substance business, taking foreign direct investment and planting those factories deep into our communities, being productive and leading it out. The company I mentioned there, it happens not to be American now, it happens to be French. And you get a lot of that in Ireland. There's a lot of European investment. But by far the dominant investor in Ireland has been that US relationship that the ambassador spoke about. And that gave us the confidence in IBEC when others were less timid, and some remain timid, to say that the potential growth rate in the Irish economy is 4% per annum in volume terms through my lifetime. I fully expect to be dead when it stops being that. Because what it is a combination of the productivity or the fancy words that economists might use, the intensive or endogenous growth that comes from having a fixed population, but making them smarter through education and giving them better capital. That is writ large throughout Ireland now, as capacity utilisation is nowhere near high. There remains huge capacity within the Irish stock of capital to continue a growth rate. That is worth 2% a year. But in addition, we are the first in our generation that now have the capacity to think big and to actually think about what actually is a defining piece about Ireland, which is its depopulation. Ireland is the only place on earth to have a lower population today than in the 1840s. In the 1840s, there were 1.1 billion people on earth. Today, there is 7.5 billion, heading for 8. Ireland, as we know, had 8 million people on the island in 1841 when the census was taken on both parts of the island. What people fail to appreciate, there was only 17 million on the island of Britain on the same night. Ireland was 1/3 of the joint population. Ireland today is less than 8 million. Britain is 65 million in contrast. And it's nothing got to do with the famine. Nothing. We haven't starved the last 200 years. It's got to do with missing the Industrial Revolution. And we should be damned if we're going to miss it a second time. And the good news is we haven't. And beyond that, we've now seen a scaling up of our population. We're now at 4.9 million people in the Republic. And with the addition of the North, we're now near 7 million people. The two islands together are now 72 million people, and the only two islands in Europe which are increasing in population. These two countries will be the largest population mass and the biggest economic union within the European Union if it weren't for the decision taken by our friends across the water to decide to go home early. And given that I'm now sophisticated and in Dublin with a big job, I'm going to do Chim CBS proud, and I'm going to quote Tennyson. And he says, "Winds of the world give answer. They are whimpering to and fro. And what should they know of England, who only England know?" So a very apt comment is that when you get Little Islander tradition, one of the real fears for me is the country that will be most disaffected by a hard Brexit will not be Britain, it will be Ireland. We see this currently in transformations right across our business model. We're seeing people suffering with the exchange rate risk, but that is actually superficial. Painful as it is, cross-border shopping, getting margins eroded. More significantly, the incentive to go to the bigger island in terms of consumer market is encouraging companies to set up bases in the United Kingdom. And so if there is a compelling logic to being within the European Union, as we profess Ireland as a location for that, there is a similar and equal compelling logic to be in the United Kingdom to service a much bigger market. And yet we're still not building that infrastructure. I'm going to end on this point. I've never, against the backdrop of that 6.5% disposable income growth, this is historic, never in the history of Ireland has the purchasing power of an Irish household increased by as much as it has in the last number of years. Against the backdrop of a consumer price level that still hasn't returned to 2008 levels post the crisis. There is no inflation in consumer price basket in Ireland. Yes, people concentrate on items that are going up, rent, insurances, but then blithely ignore the disruptive technologies of the internet, the retailers that have come from Germany to change the consumer basket and so on. So never in the history of the state, of a level that was already high and experiencing a 6.5% disposable income growth, this is as Galbraith, that great advisor to JFK, would have called private affluence. But that private affluence is currently existing against public squalor. And squalor may sound like too harsh a word, but anybody who's been in the A&Es, when you look around the capital equipment, which is first class, look around the consultants, first class, the medical assistants, the infrastructure, the hospitals invariably first class, the clients in the A&E and their time and what jobs they do and their opportunity costs of lying there, the expense of all that private piece and the sum of the parts, public squalor. This is a society that could actually be building for a bigger Ireland. There's a belief that we haven't got the money. And I'll leave you with this. Ireland was not expected to come out of the fiscal crisis in a generation. Ireland is beyond its fiscal crisis. Its population's increased, its business model's been cash generative. Our balance of payments are enormous. We've been paying our way, in contrast to Britain, who's got a big problem with its business model. Bad exporters, balance of payments deficit. In that context, and Michael, in his previous job, might blanch at this, what difference is it between being at 75% debt to GDP ratio and 85%? And the answer is precisely nothing. So how could that be? That's 10 percentage points of GDP. 10 percentage points of GDP is 26 billion euros. Well, if I told you we were at 85% of that GDP 3 years ago, when we were at 120% and everyone predicting we'd go higher, you'd say that was a fantasy. And yet here we are, lauding the fact that we've reached an arbitrary milestone. And that would be fine if everything was okay in our society, but it's not. We see a housing crisis. We see that the M50 is already at its predicted level for 2025. We see infrastructure problems all around us. And yet we don't have the wit, not the actual anything else, the wit to actually say, can we do something different? And others will cite, well, we can't do it because of fiscal rules. And yet, within Europe, they say you can break those fiscal rules if you bring in private capital and do a public-private partnership to deliver the infrastructure that you require. So here we have a mass of private affluence and private capital cascading into the country, and not the wit to actually connect these up to deliver for our society. So forget about the small things, and here are two things that I would tell you that will cost the sum. In one case, €9 a week, even repaying back the debt. If that's your gig about repaying it back, you don't need to. It's even less if you don't want to do that. We could have a tunnel to the United Kingdom for €9 a week. For €9 a week, we could build a tunnel between Rosslare and Fishguard. For €9 a week, we could complete the urban motorway system around Ireland. And what is €9 a week? Well, the average disposable income for an Irish household, figures that Father Sean Healy quotes every day of the week, is €800. That's the context of €9 a week. It's not €9 off €90. It's 9 out of 800. It's for a little bit over 1%. And that's purely cost. I've added no benefit to having the motorway system, no benefit to having the tunnel, not even including the other parties on the other side of the tunnel to contribute to it. And yet, we are devoid of ambition at a time when we have never, in the history of this state, ever had such great opportunities. That is our tragedy. That is the tragedy that you in this room have, with all of the forbearance that you bring tonight to listen to me, but also for your forebearers, now have to embrace and actually give right to. The time of keeping down the Joneses and the austerity fetish is over. Private affluence is great. To grow at 3 or 4% is great, but what does it gain us if we don't have a public infrastructure to match? We will end up in the same consequence as British society, with an increasing population and migrants coming in, who has been an absolute boon to our society, not just in the workplace, but in our society and cosmopolitanism. If we do not build the infrastructure, we will start to see the scarcities that are now developing. And they inevitably, given that our societies are so close, will have the same consequences for our relationships with Europe and beyond. So if you are to embrace that Ireland has a different destiny to the United Kingdom, which is one that I don't personally share, but if you are of that mindset, then the critical thing is about our capital infrastructure. And the good news is we have the money, people are willing to lend to us, and the interest rates are trivial. If you can't beat 2% of a cost of capital, your grace is here. I think that's God's way of saying you shouldn't be in charge of resources. Thank you.